Hey, welcome back to the garage, everyone. Today, we're going to keep your car from shaking at the red light. All right, everybody, the real reason, or it could be the real reason that your engine shakes so badly at the red light is the fact that your engine shock absorbers need to be replaced. You may recall that a few videos ago when we did the oil cooler lines, I actually pulled the shocks and the engine dampening shocks and the motor mounts out of this car. I looked at them at that time and I thought to myself, well, you know what, these look pretty good. I'm going to keep using them. I think the engine mounts in the car are still fine, but I'm going to replace them anyway. And I have some new engine shocks over there on the workbench. We'll take a look at those here in a little bit. But for right now, we're going to get this engine prepared to be lifted up a little bit. Then we'll get the car in the air, and we'll change out the engine mounts and the engine shock absorbers. First thing we're going to do is disconnect the throttle linkage here to make preparation to raise the engine. So let's get that done first. Just need to remove this clip right here. There we go. All right, and we're going to disconnect that ball joint right there. And that will free that up. All right, let's get the car in the air and get underway. All right, this is what we're after right here. We've got an engine shock here, and we've got an engine shock right here. These engine mounts, as I said last time I had them out, they looked really good. I chose not to replace them at the time, but I'm going to go ahead and do it now. Up next, we will disconnect the bottom of these first, and then we will remove the bolts from the bottom of the engine mounts. All right, the engine shock is a 10 millimeter nut, and we're going to grab on to the shank to keep that from turning. All right, we got that one off. I'm going to do the other one. I'm not going to move the camera just for that. There we go. All right, engine shocks are free. Now we're going to loosen the engine mounts. This is an 8 millimeter Allen. And if you watch my previous video on this, hopefully it won't be as difficult. I'm going to snake the wrench very far up into the frame. Oh, that was much nicer. You guys go back and look at my other video where I had to remove and drop the bolt, where I had to remove these bolts the first time. Holy cow. I went and purchased new bolts because the heads on the old ones were no longer usable. Let's get the other one out. Yeah, of course. There we go. All right, we've got our transmission jack with some wood underneath the oil pan, and we're going to get ready to raise the engine up just a smidgen to facilitate removal of the parts. Keeping an eye on everything. Keeping an eye out for strange, or an ear out for strange noises. I believe that'll do it. All right, let's see if we can't get this stuff out of here now. All right, so the engine arm is off of the engine mount. So now we can take these two small, can you see? No, you can't see. What are we looking at here? Okay, so now The engine arm is off of the mount, so now we should be able to remove these two small bolts that hold the mount to the frame of the car. All right, we found ourselves a 6mm Allen socket, and the best way to do this is to position the socket onto the screw and then position your ratchet out and then bang your finger. All right, we should be able to get that with our fingers. That's what that looks like. Let's do the other one now. It's on the back side of the mount. Same procedure though. We'll position our Allen socket under the screw, and then we'll get our socket wrench. We'll do the rest by hand. You know, all things being equal, these engine mounts are pretty easy to remove if you're not dealing with corroded fasteners and all that kind of stuff. All right, there we go. There is the engine mount that I did not want to replace last time I was here. Let's see if we have any signs that there may be a problem. There might be a little cracking right there. It doesn't look bad to me. So, well, anyway, we got new ones. We're going to change them out. Into the trash it goes. All right, so let me take the top bolt off of this engine shock. Let's see if we can remove it by hand now. Don't lose the little washer. All right, so there is our used, or this is our old shock. And you can push this one in fairly easily. Pulling it out, it's not, I mean, it's not completely shot, but it's, you know, it's not a new one, that's for sure. So right up here, these bushings, these are, this little setup right here is a bushing that the shock rests in. If you want to replace, now there's rubber up inside this guy and it kind of has some give from side to side, right? It seems to be pretty stiff. These are $100 a side if you want to change these out. All right, up next we're going to install the new engine mount and new engine shock. We will place the engine mount up here. We'll get the center bolt started first before we get the two outside bolts started that go into the frame. We'll also place the shock here and attach it at the top with its single 10mm nut. We won't fasten it to the bottom until after we lower the engine. But one key thing here is that you need to get the center bolt on the engine mount started first into the mount arm before you try to start the two bolts to which affix the mount to the frame. All right, I've got both engine shocks and both motor mounts pulled out of the car now. I'm going to try to get our new engine mount here on the passenger side installed. Okay, I think I figured out a way to get it started. Just lift the engine up. Don't try to fish the bolt up through the hole. That's stupid. Just slip it, just start it right here by hand, like this. Well, I didn't think of that before. Because you're not the smartest fellow in the world, you know. All right, that's good enough. It's started. That's all I wanted to do. Now I'm going to start the one on the other side. All right, we will not be able to do this one in the same fashion. There's just not enough room. I'm not entirely thrilled about this little metal shield. It's really kind of a pain, to be honest with you. I raise the engine a little more. All right, there we go. Now let's see if we can fish our bolt up through there. All right, so for the driver's side, we don't have the luxury of being able to install this bolt the way we did on the passenger side, so we had to snake it up through the frame rail. That's not really a whole lot of fun. All right, we got that rascal started. All right, now that we've got the center bolt of both engine mounts started, we're going to put the engine shocks in place. I've got half of the hardware, or the original hardware, already installed there. And we'll compress this shock and slip it into its spot. It's just like the one on the passenger side, except I don't want to move the camera. However, I do need to raise the engine a little bit. Again. There we go. Okay, final. Now we got the shock in place. Let's tighten up the top nut. Little 10mm nut and a washer is all that is required. It's a very tight squeeze up through here, so filming is really not very practical. Using a 1/4-inch ratchet, approaching it from the front of the vehicle, that seems to work. Actually, the top of the shock is firmly affixed to the shaft, so just grab the shock with your one hand and turn it. Let's go ahead and get the passenger side in next. All right, we're going to tighten that top part up then. All right, we've got it lined up with our hole there. Now we need to get the 2 bolts for each engine mount started. These are the 2 bolts that hold the mount to the frame. All right, let's get our engine mount bolts started. We might have to lower the engine a little bit. All right, I think we located it. All right, we got to lower the engine. All right, it took some doing, but we got the bolts straightened out. All right, so we're not cross-threading it. Now we get to do the back bolt. All right, we're going to need a little stabby tool to find the hole again. Come on, don't cross thread. Let's put the socket wrench on it. See what happens. That seems to be going in straight, but we can't go any further until we lower the engine. We'll get the other 2 on the driver's side started, and then we'll lower the engine down and we'll tighten everything up. All right, the gift that just keeps on giving. We're going to try to get these 2 bolts here in the driver's side mount. The new mounts are clearly taller than the old ones. The old ones were a little bit compressed. All right, I had to loosen the passenger side engine mount bolts to the frame completely because the engine raises in this fashion. It raises more on the passenger side than it does on the driver's side. So what I really needed to do was put the 2 bolts into this mount on the driver's side first and then the passenger side. Why didn't you know that before? Well, because, you know, it's a thing, right? We just learned stuff. All right, so I'm putting my socket bit into the Allen screw, and I've got to use one hand to move the mount around and get the holes lined up, and use the other hand to tighten to get the bolt started. All right, I'm gonna see if I can get that 1/4-inch ratchet on there. All right, I was able to tighten it up with my fingers some. Now let's get the inboard bolt started. You watch, I'll have to take that one out, do the inboard first and then this one. All right, I finally got that inboard bolt nestled in place into the hole. And I'm not gonna really tell you what all was involved with that, because it's not meant for others to hear. All right, I think I'm gonna have to use a regular Allen wrench for this to get it started. And I'm gonna try to put it in there like that. Wrong way. I cannot believe I just did that. I actually screwed the bolt the wrong way. I cannot believe I just did that. And frustration sets in. Well, I believe I got it started. All right, let's go back to the passenger side and tighten those again. Okay, we'll make this quick. Ladies and gentlemen, we have all of the engine mount fasteners started. Up next, we're going to lower the engine and tighten everything down and install the bottom fasteners on the engine shocks. All right, so I'm going to go back and forth between driver's side and passenger side and tighten up these engine mount bolts. I'll be right back. All right, folks, we're done underneath the car. We've got the shocks attached. We've got the engine mounts attached left and right. A little bit of work we have to do up top. I cannot tighten this inner bolt from down here. I'm going to do that from up top, hopefully. And hopefully I won't make a liar out of myself. And then we'll put the throttle shaft rod back in place and we'll fire it up. All right, we're ready to come down. That inboard bolt on the driver's side motor mount was a bit tricky. We're going to show you how we tightened it up as soon as the car is on the ground. Pretty tight quarters there on the inboard side of the driver's side motor mount. So I was able to get this Allen key onto it, and then I used a long socket like this and simply slipped it over this end and used this to turn, and it was actually a really simple solution to a complicated problem. So let's fire this thing up and see how we did. All right, I'm going to give you guys a bird's eye view of the first fire. The engine's it's going to be cold. The engine hasn't been cranked in probably 5 or 6 days. Glow plugs. Contact! Well, we're pretty smooth. I think it's time for a test drive. All right, I'm going to give you my honest observation before I get out on the road. As I look at this engine warm up, the engine appears to jostle back and forth maybe a little more than it did before. But the more I think about that, that might be the way it's supposed to be, because the engine mounts, maybe they were too compressed and hard, right, from age, and the new ones are tall and poofy, so they can absorb the vibration of the engine and not translate it into the car. Maybe it was the engine mounts that needed to be replaced and not the shocks. Let's take it out on the road and give it a test drive. All right, we're stopped at a stop sign with the air conditioner on. You can feel a gentle a gentle jostle, I guess, you know. I guess these cars, you know, this is the way they are. It's not perfect, but I would say it's definitely better than it was. So we're going to come to a stop here. And, you know, it's pretty doggone smooth, I'll be honest with you. Let's go. All right. All right, so, you know, pickup is good. And very, very smooth. Very smooth indeed. But I'm going to put it in reverse. Okay. Then I'm going to put it in forward. Give it a little gas and lurch forward. Then I'm going to stop abruptly and see what happens. All right, so that right there, that little surge forward and then braking, that performed much better. To be honest with you, that performed a lot better. Usually, if you would give it gas, or fuel rather, you give it fuel, and then you go a couple of feet, and then you let off the gas abruptly to make the engine come back to idle. That engine deceleration would be translated into the car through those compressed old engine mounts. So I'm going to call that a success. I guess what I'm trying to strive for is perfection, and well, trying to get a perfect idle out of a 5-cylinder diesel engine is probably not going to happen, to be honest with you. If you guys got any ideas, let me know. I was still planning on digging into cylinder number 1, but it seems to have remedied itself, to be honest with you, because I pulled that fuel injector out about 3 weeks ago and cleaned it up and retorqued it. If you recall, I replaced all the fuel injectors a while back. Anyway, I pulled it out and I retorqued everything, put it all back together, and that little bit of injector nailing that I had, it went away. So I may not be working on the fuel injectors anytime soon, so we'll see what happens there. Alright folks, that's it for the test drive. Appreciate you guys stopping by my channel. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And if you'd like to get notified whenever I release a new video, don't forget to click that little bell down below. We'll talk to you guys later. Have a good one.